My name is Matthew, and I am 22 years old. I still remember the day my acceptance letter from Brown University arrived. My hands trembled as I read those magical words, confirming 18 years of hard work had paid off. Mom and Dad had always promised my college fund would be waiting. They had saved every month since I was born. Then one night, I overheard them whispering about finances in the kitchen. What I discovered next shattered everything I thought I knew about family. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button as I tell you how I outsmarted the ultimate betrayal. To understand why what happened hurt so much, you need to know about my family. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Boston with my parents and younger brother. Dad, James, worked as an engineer at a respected firm. He was the analytical type, always calculating, planning, and thinking several steps ahead. Mom, Diana, was a certified accountant who managed finances for a local business. Between the two of them, they made a comfortable living that put us solidly in the middle class. Then there was my brother Aaron, 3 years younger than me at 19. Aaron was undeniably brilliant, but in a different way than I was. While I thrived in structured academic environments, Aaron despised school. He found the curriculum boring and restrictive. What he did love was technology and entrepreneurship. Since he was 14, he had been coding, building websites, and talking about startups. My parents always said he had the spirit of Steve Jobs, but needed proper guidance. Our home was modest but comfortable. A 4-bedroom colonial with a small backyard where Dad had built us a treehouse when we were kids. I can still picture my bedroom with its navy blue walls covered in academic awards and college pennants. The hallway displayed our family photos, chronicling vacations to the Grand Canyon, Florida, and that one memorable trip to Yellowstone when Aaron almost got too close to a buffalo. Education was the cornerstone of our family values. At dinner, conversations often revolved around school achievements, the importance of college, and how education was the pathway to success. My parents never missed a parent-teacher conference or school event. They checked homework, hired tutors when needed, and celebrated every academic milestone like it was Olympic gold. When I was very young, they started a college fund for me. Each month, without fail, a portion of their paychecks went into that account. They were transparent about it, showing me the statements occasionally so I could see how it was growing. By my senior year of high school, that account had reached $120,000. Not enough for 4 years at an elite private university, but a substantial sum that would cover a significant portion. I held up my end of the bargain. Throughout high school, I maintained a 4.0 GPA. I was president of the debate team, editor of the school newspaper, and volunteered weekly at the local library teaching seniors how to use computers. When graduation day came, I stood on stage as valedictorian, delivering a speech about ambition and gratitude, while my parents beamed from the front row. The hard work paid off when I received a partial scholarship to Brown University. It would cover about 40% of the tuition, but the remaining costs would still be substantial. That is where my college fund would come in. The plan seemed perfect, the path clear. I would become the first person in our family to attend an Ivy League school. My brother Aaron attended my graduation ceremony but seemed distracted. He kept checking his phone and left immediately after to meet with some friends who were interested in technology. I did not think much of it at the time. That was just Aaron being Aaron, always with his mind on the next big idea. Our house had always been filled with conversations about my future, where I would go to college, what I would study, how I would use my education to build a successful career. The assumed trajectory was clear. Graduate from a prestigious university, maybe attend graduate school, then enter a stable, respected profession. My parents had charted this course from the time I was in elementary school, and I had followed it diligently. During those last few weeks of summer before college, My excitement was at an all-time high. I spent hours researching my future professors, joining Brown student Facebook groups, and planning out my class schedule. Mom helped me shop for dorm essentials, and Dad talked about driving me to campus together as a family. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. The future I had worked toward for my entire life was finally within reach. Little did I know that behind the scenes, a betrayal was brewing that would shake the very foundation of trust I had built with my family over 22 years. By June after graduation, I was deep into preparation for college. My room had become command central, with checklists taped to my wall, brochures from Brown scattered across my desk, and a growing pile of dorm supplies in the corner. I was methodically working through the university paperwork, filling out housing forms, and registering for freshman orientation. It was during this time that I began noticing things that seemed off. Looking back, the signs were there, but I was too trusting to piece them together. The first red flag appeared when I casually asked Mom about transferring money from my college fund to pay the first semester deposit. She quickly changed the subject, mentioning something about needing to consult with Dad first. When I followed up a few days later, Dad said they were looking into some better interest rates before making the transfer. Then I noticed Dad clearing his browser history one evening. I had walked into his home office to ask about dinner plans, and caught a glimpse of him closing several banking tabs and clearing his recent history. When he saw me, he jumped slightly and closed his laptop. Dad had always been open about finances, often using them as teaching moments. This secretive behavior was completely out of character. The third strange occurrence happened when Mom changed all her passwords. I discovered this when I tried to use her laptop to print something, and found myself locked out of her email and banking apps that had previously stayed logged in. When I asked about it, she claimed it was due to a security warning from her bank. That made sense on its own, but combined with everything else, it added to my growing unease. Late one night, I got up to get water and overheard my parents on the phone in their bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear Dad speaking in hushed tones. I only caught fragments. Legal implications, transfer options, and we need this done quickly. The conversation ended with, "Thank you, Peter. We appreciate your discretion in this matter." Peter was a friend of theirs who worked as an attorney. Why would they need legal advice in the middle of the night? The fifth and most alarming sign came when Aaron suddenly started purchasing expensive tech equipment. One day, he came home with a brand new MacBook Pro, high-end monitors, and server equipment. When I asked how he could afford it, he vaguely mentioned an investor who believed in his ideas. Aaron had never had that kind of money before, and our parents had always been strict about large purchases. My suspicions grew when I stumbled across some business documents in the living room. Aaron had left papers scattered on the coffee table, and I noticed a sleek logo for something called Next Tech Solutions, along with business plan drafts. What caught my eye was the funding section that mentioned initial capital investment, but no specific source. One evening, I was heading upstairs when I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. Mom sounded excited, but nervous. "This could change everything for him," she said. "This level of investment could really launch his career." "I know," Dad replied. "It is a lot of money, but if anyone can make it work, Aaron can. Sometimes you have to take big risks for big rewards." They stopped talking when they heard me on the stairs. Mom quickly wiped the papers they were reviewing into a folder and smiled too brightly. "How is the college prep going, honey?" Despite these concerning signs, I pushed my worries aside. These were my parents, after all. The people who had supported me my entire life, who had promised me this education fund since I was a child. Whatever was happening, I reasoned, must have a logical explanation that did not involve betraying me. The plan was to transfer my tuition money in July, giving plenty of time before the August payment deadline. As that date approached, I began to feel increasingly anxious. Something was definitely off in our household. Aaron was spending more time in hushed conversations with our parents. Doors would close when I approached. Discussions would abruptly change topics when I entered a room. Still, I maintained my trust. These people were my family. They had built my college fund penny by penny for 18 years. They had celebrated every academic achievement. They had promised me this future. Surely my suspicions were just pre-college jitters, an overactive imagination fueled by anxiety about the big changes ahead. I could not have been more wrong. The day that changed everything came exactly 2 weeks before my tuition payment was due. I had spent the morning finalizing my class schedule and was feeling excited about the literature seminar that had just opened a spot for me. At dinner that evening, I decided it was time to directly address the elephant in the room. "So," I said, trying to sound casual as I passed the salad bowl to Aaron, "I need to send in my first tuition payment by next Friday. Can we transfer the money from my college fund this weekend?" The kitchen fell silent. Dad and Mom exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. Aaron suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "Actually, Matthew," Dad said, clearing his throat, "we need to have a family meeting after dinner. There is something we need to discuss." Those words sent a chill through me. In our family, "we need to have a family meeting" had always preceded difficult news. The last time I had heard that phrase was when Grandma was diagnosed with cancer. After dinner, we gathered in the living room. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Mom and Dad sat across from me on the love seat, their postures stiff and uncomfortable. Aaron hovered near the doorway, as if ready to make a quick escape if needed. The room itself seemed to reflect the tension. The family photos on the mantel, once symbols of our happy life together, now looked like artifacts from a different time. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles floating in the air. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence. Dad cleared his throat again. "Matthew, there is no easy way to say this." He glanced at Mom, who nodded encouragingly. "There has been a situation with your college fund." I felt my heart begin to race. What kind of situation? "We made some investments," Mom jumped in, her voice unnaturally high-pitched. "We were trying to grow the fund even more for you. We wanted to make sure you had enough for all 4 years at Brown. But unfortunately," Dad continued, "those investments did not work out as we hoped. The market took an unexpected downturn in areas we had invested in." Mom reached for my hand across the coffee table. Her palm was clammy. "We lost everything, honey. The college fund is gone." The words hit me like physical blows. Gone? 18 years of saving? Vanished? It did not make sense. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How could it all be gone? What exactly did you invest in?" Dad launched into a convoluted explanation about real estate ventures and stock market fluctuations. He threw around terms like market volatility and unforeseen circumstances, and high-risk, high-reward opportunities. But something about his explanation felt rehearsed, as if he had practiced it multiple times. Mom kept nodding along, occasionally adding details about how devastated they were, how they had been trying to find solutions for weeks. "We explored every option," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "We even considered taking out a second mortgage. But with the current interest rates, we just cannot make it work." Throughout this entire conversation, Aaron remained silent. He stood in the doorway, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, eyes fixed on the carpet. Not once did he look at me directly. I felt like I was underwater. The sounds around me became muffled. The room spun slightly. $120,000. Gone. My future. Evaporated in an instant. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I was too shocked to let them fall. "So what happens now?" I finally managed to ask. my voice breaking. What about Brown? Dad sighed heavily, as if he carried the weight of the world. We think the best option might be to defer for a year. You could work, save some money. We will try to help as much as we can, and you can apply for additional loans and scholarships. A year? I repeated numbly. Push everything back a year? What about my scholarship? What about my housing assignment? What about everything I have worked for? We know this is difficult, Mom said, finally letting her tears fall. We are so sorry, Matthew. We never thought this would happen. We were just trying to secure your future. I sat there, trying to process the enormity of what they were telling me. My entire life plan, derailed in a single conversation. The future I had worked towards since kindergarten, suddenly uncertain, and something about their explanation just did not add up. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying the conversation over and over. The rehearsed explanations, the vague investment details, Aaron's suspicious silence, the timing of their expensive legal consultation with Peter, the new equipment in Aaron's room, the hushed conversations about investments and capital. A horrible suspicion began to take root in my mind. Could they have possibly taken my college fund and given it to Aaron for his business venture? No, I told myself. My parents would never do that. They had promised me that money. They had saved it specifically for my education. They would never betray me like that. But as the night wore on and sleep eluded me, I could not shake the feeling that I was not being told the truth. Something was very wrong in our family, and I was determined to find out what it was. 1 week after the devastating family meeting, I was still reeling from the news. I had called Brown University to discuss my options, learning that deferring would mean reapplying for my scholarship next year with no guarantee of receiving it again. I had started applying for full-time jobs instead of the part-time campus position I had lined up. My entire world had been turned upside down. That Tuesday, I finished my shift at the local bookstore earlier than expected. The manager had cut my hours because business was slow. Another blow in a week full of disappointments. I arrived home around 3:30, 2 hours before anyone expected me. The house was quiet as I entered through the side door, dropping my backpack in the kitchen. As I headed upstairs to change out of my work clothes, I heard voices coming from Dad's home office. The door was partially open, and I recognized Dad's voice, followed by Mom's, and then Aaron's excited tone. I froze in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt what sounded like an important conversation. This business plan is impressive, Aaron, Dad was saying. The projections look even better than we initially thought. With this level of capital investment, Next Tech Solutions could really make waves in the industry, Mom added. Your timing with this AI integration idea is perfect. I could not have done it without your support, Aaron replied. Most parents would never take this kind of risk on their kid's startup idea. Well, most kids do not have your vision, Dad said proudly. Aaron, you have real entrepreneurial talent. This could be the beginning of something huge. And honestly, Mom added in a lower voice that I had to strain to hear, Aaron will make so much better use of this money than paying for some literature classes. This is a real investment in the future. $120,000 is the perfect seed money, Aaron said excitedly. The office space downtown is already secured, and I have 2 programmers ready to start next month. My blood ran cold. $120,000. The exact amount of my college fund. The exact amount that had supposedly been lost in bad investments. But what I heard next confirmed my worst fears. Aaron will succeed with this investment far more than Matthew would with that fancy degree, Dad said confidently. Your brother is smart, but he does not have your business instincts. He would just be another college graduate with debt. You could be the next tech visionary. Next Tech Solutions is fully funded with $120,000 from what would have been Matthew's tuition, Mom said. And I truly believe this is the better investment for our family's future. I must have made a noise, a gasp, or a step back because the conversation suddenly stopped. I quickly ducked into the bathroom, heart pounding, and locked the door behind me. I slid down against the door until I was sitting on the cold tile floor, my entire body shaking. They had lied to me. They had taken my college fund, money that had been promised to me my entire life, and given it to Aaron for his startup. They had looked me in the eyes and told me it was all gone due to bad investments, when in reality, they had deliberately redirected it to my brother because they thought he deserved it more. I sat in that bathroom for nearly 30 minutes, cycling through shock, disbelief, betrayal, and a white-hot anger, unlike anything I had ever experienced. The people I trusted most in the world, the people who were supposed to support and protect me, had deliberately sabotaged my future to benefit my brother, and they had lied about it, crafting an elaborate story to cover their tracks. When I finally emerged, I went straight to my room and closed the door. I heard my family members moving around downstairs, blissfully unaware that I knew their secret. I needed proof, something concrete beyond what I had overheard. I needed to see the evidence with my own eyes. The opportunity came the next day when everyone left the house. Mom went to her book club. Aaron headed to meet with potential employees for his new company. And Dad had a golf game with clients. I had the house to myself for at least 4 hours. With trembling hands, I entered Dad's office. I had never gone through my parents' private documents before. It felt wrong, invasive. But what they had done to me was far worse. I started with his desk drawers, methodically working through folders and binders. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found a manila envelope labeled Next Tech Solutions. Inside were bank transfer receipts, showing withdrawals from an account I recognized as my college fund. A series of transfers, starting small but growing larger, culminating in a final transfer of $77,000 just 3 weeks ago. In total, exactly $120,000, the full amount of my college fund. Next, I found incorporation papers for Next Tech Solutions, listing Aaron as CEO and my parents as board members and primary investors. The document explicitly stated that the initial capital investment came from family funds reallocated from educational savings. My hands shook with rage as I read those words. The final nail in the coffin was a series of emails I found when I checked Dad's email on his computer. He had stayed logged in, making it easy to search for relevant terms. There, in black and white, was an email exchange between my parents discussing the reallocation of my college fund. "Are we doing the right thing?" Mom had written. "Matthew has worked so hard for this opportunity at Brown. Aaron has real potential to be the next big tech entrepreneur." Dad had replied. "Matthew is smart, but he is just going to be one more college graduate with a liberal arts degree. Aaron could be the next Mark Zuckerberg with the right backing. This money will go much further with him than paying for Matthew to study literature and history. I feel guilty," Mom admitted in another email. "We have always told Matthew this money was for his education. We are still supporting education," Dad countered. "Just a different kind. Aaron will learn more building a real business than Matthew would in a classroom. And if Next Tech succeeds, we can help Matthew later with his student loans. This is best for the family in the long run." I sat at Dad's desk, surrounded by evidence of their betrayal, and felt something break inside me. The tears that had been building for days finally came, hot and angry. I had trusted them completely. I had believed in their love and support. I had worked my entire life to make them proud, following the path they had laid out for me. And they had thrown it all away because they thought Aaron's dreams were more valuable than mine. The worst part was the realization that they did not believe in me. All those years of encouragement, of celebrating my achievements, had been hollow when it really mattered. They did not think I was worth the investment. They did not think my dreams and goals were as important as Aaron's. They had measured us against each other and found me wanting. As I carefully replaced all the documents exactly where I had found them, I made a decision. I would not confront them immediately. I would not let anger drive my actions. I would be strategic, just as they had been. But I would not let them get away with this betrayal. Somehow, I would find a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine and secure my future, with or without their support. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I had to sit across the breakfast table from my parents, making small talk while knowing they had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. I had to pass Aaron in the hallway, watching him excitedly make plans for his new office space, knowing it was all funded with money that should have secured my education. I had to pretend I was still processing the loss of my college fund while secretly planning my counterattack. My first instinct was to explode, to confront them with what I knew, and watch their lies crumble. But something held me back. If I approached this emotionally, I might end up with nothing. I needed to be strategic, just as they had been. I needed advice from someone I could trust. I reached out to Mr. Thompson, my high school English teacher and debate coach. He had always been a mentor to me, and I knew he had some background in law. Before becoming a teacher, we arranged to meet at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, where there was no chance of running into anyone from my family. "Mr. Thompson, I need your help," I said after ordering our coffees. My voice cracked as I struggled to maintain composure. "Something terrible has happened." Over the next hour, I told him everything, occasionally pausing to wipe away tears or collect myself when anger threatened to overwhelm me. I showed him photos I had secretly taken of the documents I had found. Mr. Thompson listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Matthew, I am so sorry this is happening to you," he said when I finished. "What your parents did is not just morally wrong. It might actually be legally questionable." "What do you mean?" I asked, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "College funds can be set up in different ways," he explained. "Do you know exactly how yours was established? Was it a 529 plan or some other type of account?" I thought back to the documents I had seen. It was a custodial account set up under my name, but my parents were the custodians until I turned 21. Mr. Thompson leaned forward. "That is significant. In a custodial account, the money legally belongs to you, not your parents. They are merely managing it on your behalf. If they withdrew that money for purposes other than your benefit, especially after you turned 18, they may have violated the terms of the custodianship. So what you are saying is that they might not have had the legal right to take that money and give it to Aaron." "Exactly. And here is something else to consider. You mentioned there is still about $43,000 left in the account that they have not transferred yet. That money is legally yours." For the first time in days, I felt a surge of something other than despair. I had options. I had rights. I was not powerless. Together, Mr. Thompson and I crafted a plan. It would require careful timing, documentation, and courage, but it could work. It had 5 critical steps. First, I would meet with the financial aid office at Brown University. I needed to explain my situation and see what emergency scholarships or grants might be available. Mr. Thompson offered to write a strong recommendation letter explaining my circumstances without divulging all the family details. Second, I would apply for every possible scholarship and financial aid opportunity, even ones with deadlines that had technically passed. Mr. Thompson had connections with several educational foundations and believed they might make exceptions given my unusual circumstances. Third, I would visit the bank where my custodial account was held. As an account that was technically in my name, I had a right to information about it. I might even be able to prevent further withdrawals if I could prove the money was being misused. Fourth, I would secure a stable part-time job. Brown University had already offered me a position in their library that would provide steady income during the school year. I would request more hours if possible. Fifth, and most importantly, I would create my own separate bank account at a different institution and transfer any funds I could legally access or recover. You will need to prepare for fallout from your family, Mr. Thompson warned. This could permanently damage your relationship with them. They already damaged our relationship when they stole from me and lied about it, I replied. A new determination, hardening my voice. I just need to secure my future. Over the next week, I put the plan into action. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Brown's financial aid office and was amazed by their compassion. After reviewing my situation and academic record, they offered me an additional need-based grant that would cover another 20% of my tuition. It was not everything, but it was a start. I consulted with a legal aid attorney who specialized in financial matters. She confirmed what Mr. Thompson had suggested. The custodial account legally belonged to me, and my parents had likely violated their fiduciary responsibility by transferring those funds to Aaron's business. She helped me draft a formal letter asserting my legal rights to the remaining funds. The most nerve-wracking step was visiting the bank. I was terrified my parents might somehow be alerted, but the bank officer was professional and discreet. After verifying my identity and reviewing the account terms, she confirmed that I did indeed have legal rights to the remaining $43,000, especially now that I was over 18. With the documentation from the attorney, I was able to freeze the account to prevent further withdrawals and begin the process of transferring the remaining funds to a new account at a different bank. Throughout this process, I maintained a perfect poker face at home. I continued to talk about job hunting and gap year options. I expressed disappointment, but understanding about the lost college fund. Meanwhile, I was methodically securing my future behind the scenes. The final piece fell into place when I received notice that I had been awarded an emergency scholarship from an educational foundation Mr. Thompson had contacted on my behalf. Between that scholarship, the increased financial aid, the remaining $43,000 from my original fund, and my campus job, I would be able to afford my first year at Brown. It would be tight, and I would have some loans, but it was possible. I had done it. I had found a way to attend the university I had worked so hard to get into, despite my parents' betrayal. Now, I just needed to confront them with what I knew and what I had done. I scheduled my move to campus for the following weekend, arranged to stay with a friend if things went badly, and prepared for the most difficult conversation of my life. 3 days before I was scheduled to leave for Brown, I decided it was time for the confrontation. I had secured my finances, confirmed my housing, and packed most of my belongings. Everything was in place for me to begin my college journey, regardless of how this conversation went. After dinner that evening, I asked for a family meeting. There was a certain poetic justice in using the same phrase they had used to deliver their devastating lie to me. I have something important I need to discuss with all of you, I said calmly. The confidence in my voice surprised even me. We gathered in the dining room. I deliberately chose this location rather than the living room where they had delivered their lie. I wanted neutral territory, and I wanted us all seated at the same level, face to face across the table. Mom looked concerned. Is everything okay, honey? Did something happen with your job search? You could say that, I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. But first, I want to clarify something about my college fund. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Matthew, we have been over this. I know it is disappointing, but those investments simply did not work out. Which investments exactly? I asked, maintaining eye contact. The real estate ventures you mentioned? The stock market fluctuations? Or perhaps you meant the investment in Next Tech Solutions? The color drained from my father's face. Aaron looked like he might be sick. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "What are you talking about?" Dad attempted, but his voice lacked conviction. I reached into my backpack and pulled out copies of everything I had discovered. I laid them on the table, one by one, like playing cards in a winning hand. These are bank transfer records showing $120,000 moved from my college fund to Aaron's new company. I placed the first document on the table. These are incorporation papers for Next Tech Solutions, listing the initial capital as coming from reallocated educational savings. I laid down the second document, and these, I continued, placing the final papers on the table, are emails between you two discussing how Aaron deserves my college money more than I do because his startup has more potential than my education. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. No one moved. No one spoke. The evidence lay between us, irrefutable and damning. "You lied to me," I said, my voice finally betraying a hint of the hurt I felt. "You looked me in the eyes and told me the money was gone due to bad investments, when really, you chose to give it to Aaron because you think his dreams are more valuable than mine." "Matthew, it is not that simple," Mom began, tears forming in her eyes. "We were thinking about the future of the whole family." "No," I cut her off. "You were thinking about Aaron's future, not mine. You decided my education, my hard work, my dreams did not matter as much as his startup idea." Dad leaned forward, switching to a more authoritative tone. "You do not understand business, Matthew. This was a strategic decision. Aaron's company could provide for the whole family if it succeeds. We could help you with school later. That was not your decision to make," I replied firmly. "That money was promised to me. It was saved for my education. It was in a custodial account under my name, which legally makes it mine, not yours to reallocate as you see fit." Aaron finally spoke up, his voice small and confused. "I did not know it was your college money, Matthew. They told me they had been saving to invest in my business idea separately." I looked at my brother, seeing genuine shock in his expression. "I believe you, Aaron. This is not your fault. This is on them." I gestured toward our parents. Mom was openly crying now. "We were just trying to do what was best. Aaron has such potential, such vision. We did not want to hold him back." "And what about my potential?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "What about the vision I have for my future? I worked my entire life for this opportunity at Brown, and you threw it away because you decided Aaron's dreams were more important. Now listen here," Dad said, his tone growing angry. "We are your parents. We make the financial decisions in this family. That money was ours to allocate as we saw fit." "Actually, that is not true," I said, pulling out another document. "This is a letter from an attorney, confirming that the custodial account legally belonged to me, especially after I turned 18. Your fiduciary responsibility was to use that money for my benefit, not to fund Aaron's business." I took a deep breath before delivering the final blow. "I have frozen the account and recovered the remaining $43,000. I have also been awarded additional scholarships and financial aid. I will be attending Brown University as planned. My housing is confirmed, and I move in this weekend." The shock on their faces was almost satisfying. "Almost. You what?" Dad sputtered. "You had no right to do that. That account was under our control." "No, it was not. And I have the legal documentation to prove it." The bank agreed with my attorney's assessment. "Attorney?" Mom whispered. "You consulted an attorney against your own family?" "I consulted an attorney to protect what was legally mine after my family stole from me." I corrected her. "Just like you consulted with Peter about how to legally take my money." Dad stood up, his face red with anger. "This is outrageous. I could sue you for this." "You could try," I replied calmly. "But I have documentation of the transfers, the emails discussing your intentions, and confirmation from the bank that the account was custodial. Do you really want to explain to a judge why you diverted educational funds from one child to fund another child's business venture?" The fight seemed to drain out of him as he realized the position they were in. He sank back into his chair, defeat written across his face. "I am not doing this to hurt you," I continued, my voice softer now. "I am doing this because I have worked my entire life for this opportunity, and I will not let it slip away. This was never about the money itself. It is about the trust you broke and the message you sent about how little you value my dreams compared to Aaron's." Aaron looked devastated. "I will give the money back, Matthew. I had no idea. It is too late for most of it," I said. "The $77,000 has already been spent on office space, equipment, and hiring, from what I understand. But this is not about you owing me, Aaron. This is about our parents and the choices they made." I stood up, gathering my documents. "I am going to stay with my friend Jason until I leave for Brown this weekend. I need some space from this house, and from all of you right now." "Matthew, please," Mom pleaded, reaching for my hand. "We can work this out as a family. Please, do not leave like this." I gently pulled my hand away. "I will always love you because you are my family. But I do not trust you anymore, and I need time to figure out what our relationship looks like going forward. You chose Aaron over me in the most fundamental way possible. That is going to take time to process." As I headed upstairs to grab my pre-packed bags, Dad followed me. "You are making a huge mistake," he warned. "That money could have been multiplied many times over with Aaron's business. You are being short-sighted." I turned to face him one last time before leaving. "No, Dad. You were short-sighted. You sacrificed a relationship with your son for a business gamble. Even if Aaron becomes the next tech billionaire, was it worth losing my trust forever? Was it worth knowing that every time I struggle to pay a bill or work extra hours to cover my education, it is because you decided I did not deserve the support you promised me?" The question hung in the air between us, unanswered. I grabbed my bags and walked out the front door, feeling both heartbroken and strangely liberated. The family I had trusted implicitly was now in my past. Ahead of me lay an uncertain future that I would navigate on my own terms, with my own strength and determination. As I put my bags in my car, Aaron ran out of the house. "Matthew, wait." He looked distraught, tears streaming down his face. "I am so sorry. I swear I did not know." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. "This is not your fault, Aaron. Just be careful with that money. Make something worthwhile with it, since it came at such a high cost." As I drove away from the only home I had ever known, I felt a complex mixture of grief, anger, pride, and determination. I had stood up for myself. I had secured my future against impossible odds. And I had learned perhaps the most valuable lesson of all, before I even set foot on a college campus. Sometimes the most important education comes from life itself, not from a classroom. 1 year later, I sat at my desk in my dorm room at Brown University, reflecting on how much had changed. Outside my window, autumn leaves drifted across the historic campus, and students hurried to classes with coffee cups and backpacks. I had just finished a paper for my American literature course and was taking a moment to appreciate how far I had come. The first few months after the confrontation with my family had been excruciating. The pain of betrayal cut deep, leaving wounds that seemed impossible to heal. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, questioning everything I thought I knew about family and trust. There were mornings I woke up with such anger that I could barely function. The sense of abandonment was overwhelming at times. Financially, things were tight. The recovered $43,000 Additional scholarships and campus job covered my essential expenses. But there was little left over. I budgeted carefully, ate simple meals, and said no to many social outings that my wealthier classmates took for granted. Every time I had to work an extra shift instead of joining a study group or attending a campus event, I felt a flash of resentment toward my parents. But gradually, something unexpected began to happen. Through my struggles, I found strength I never knew I possessed. I joined a support group for financially independent students, where I met others navigating college without family support. Their stories of resilience inspired me. And for the first time, I felt understood rather than alone. My roommate, Jackson, became a true friend, offering emotional support when the weight of family estrangement became too heavy. My academic advisor, Professor Williams, took a special interest in my situation and connected me with additional resources and opportunities. Slowly, I began to build a chosen family among the people who valued and supported me for who I was. As for my biological family, our relationship remained complicated. Aaron reached out regularly, desperate to rebuild our brotherhood. He sent occasional updates about Next Tech Solutions, which struggled to gain traction in a competitive market. After 6 months, he confessed the company was burning through cash with little to show for it. At 8 months, Next Tech Solutions collapsed completely. The $77,000 taken from my college fund was gone, with nothing to show for it except expensive equipment that sold for pennies on the dollar and an empty office space with a broken lease. Aaron was devastated, but the experience taught him valuable lessons about business and ethics that no amount of success could have imparted. My parents tried to contact me numerous times in those early months. I responded selectively, maintaining firm boundaries. They fluctuated between defensiveness, we were thinking of the family's future, and regret. We made a terrible mistake. What they never seemed to fully grasp was that the issue was not just the money but the fundamental betrayal of trust and the clear message they had sent about valuing one child's potential over another's. By Christmas, when I briefly visited home, the dynamics had shifted dramatically. The failure of Next Tech Solutions had humbled my parents. The loss of $77,000 with nothing to show for it forced them to confront the consequences of their choice. They apologized more sincerely this time, finally acknowledging the real harm they had caused. "We were wrong, Matthew," Dad admitted as we sat in the living room. The same space where they had delivered their devastating lie a year earlier. We got caught up in the excitement of Aaron's ideas and lost sight of what was right. We betrayed you, and no apology can fully address that. I accepted their apology, but maintained my independence. Our relationship would never return to what it once was, but perhaps it could evolve into something new, built on more honest foundations. The experience transformed me in profound ways. I became more self-reliant, more discerning about whom to trust, and more confident in my ability to overcome obstacles. My academic performance, despite the additional work hours and financial stress, was exceptional. Professors commented on my unusual maturity and determination compared to my peers. Perhaps most surprisingly, I found myself free of bitterness. The anger that had consumed me in those early months gradually transformed into something else. Compassion, mixed with clear-eyed wisdom. I came to see my parents not as the perfect protectors of my childhood, but as flawed humans who made a terrible mistake. Their betrayal was real and inexcusable, but defining my life by that betrayal would only continue to hurt me. The greatest lesson I learned was about boundaries. Love does not mean allowing others to harm you, even if those others are family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to establish clear boundaries that protect your well-being and define what you will and will not accept in a relationship. I also learned about the true meaning of wealth. While my college experience lacked the financial ease I had once expected, it was rich in other ways. I valued my education more deeply because I had fought for it. I appreciated small pleasures and opportunities that my peers often overlooked. And I developed a kind of emotional resilience that no amount of money could buy. Today, as I prepare to begin my sophomore year, I feel a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. The path ahead is still challenging, financially constrained, but undeniably mine. I chose this path, fought for it, and earned every step forward through my own determination. Family, I have learned, is not just about blood relations and shared history. It is about who stands by you when it matters most, who respects your dreams and boundaries, who sees your value clearly without comparing it to someone else's. Sometimes family is the people you are born to, and sometimes it is the people you find along the way. So, if you are facing betrayal from those who should have protected you, know this. It is possible to rebuild your life on your own terms. It is possible to find strength in your broken places, and it is possible to create a future defined not by what was taken from you, but by what you choose to build for yourself. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who wronged you? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest growth comes from our deepest wounds.